Welcome back to the Mintner Method. I'm your host, Andrew Mintner, and on today's episode, we are going to break down UFC 307. Now, the main event for this card is between Alex Pereira and Khalil Rountree. Now, we'll do that matchup last. We're going to work through the prelims and lead up to it. And if you are new to my UFC episodes, they are a little longer. They're going to be probably upwards of 40 minutes, depending. It just takes a little bit of time to get through each matchup, and it takes a lot of work to get the statistics, put in and whatnot, and kind of do the breakdowns, right? So on the first matchup that we're going to look at is we're going to be looking at Alexander Hernandez versus Austin Hubbard. Now, the spreadsheet I have here is based off advanced statistics that I have formulated and helped create to use and give you a better barometer of what you're watching fight-wise. And so these are not statistics that you see normally spoke about. Like if you're watching the fights like casually, it's a little bit more nuanced. So what we have is we have distance accuracy offense, and that's when fighters are fighting at a distance, so they're striking. And then you have distance defense accuracy, which is their defense at a distance. Obviously, your distance attempts per minute, which gives you kind of like a pace, like fighters who, have higher distance attempts, they have more volume, more pace. Less makes them a little more methodical, a little more measured, I would say. And then as we scroll to the right, we have numerous other things. We have knockdown percentage, which is genuinely just your knockdown rate divided by your strikes landed. So, if you had 100 strikes landed, one knockdown, you'd have a 1% knockdown rate, correct? And usually anything approaching 2% is pretty good. It's pretty solid. And then we have your control percent offense and your control percent defense. Or you can call it offensive control, defensive control, whatever you want. So basically, it's more nuanced than just takedowns. It's anytime you're in an offensive control position. So it could be the clinch, it could be on the ground, it could be anything of that nature, right? And essentially all that I do is I go to the website, UFCstats.com, and I'll click on, a matchup, and then I'll look at, control time right here, right? And so basically this is in seconds divided by total time. Pretty simple, right? So now, I know you're looking at the total time and you're probably like, well, that doesn't seem like a lot of fight time. And normally our sample sizes that we're using are going to be from the previous 4 to 5 fights, as long as they are not, over like 4 or 5 years ago, right? We want a fighter who is in recent form, but also has a large enough sample size so we can kind of get an understanding what kind of fighter they are, right? So anyway, let's get back to the first matchup at hand. That's going to be Austin Hubbard versus Alexander Hernandez. Both of these fighters are very similar in their output on the feet. Accuracy is very similar. Distance defense is very similar. Output, very similar. And Hubbard has fought more time at a distance in his sample size and has outpaced differential strikes, for the most part. Neither one are extremely powerful. I know that if you watched Hernandez in his early days when he was coming up, and I believe he beat Dairush on short notice, you're like, oh man, this guy's got plenty of power. That just hasn't translated recently, and that was a long time ago. We'll dive into that in just a second. And then when you look at from the control percentages, they're both very similar, 15% offense and defense. Not really a big advantage either way. So let's take a look at the overall matchup. Similar height, similar stature reach-wise, and then age, similar, 33, 32. And, what I like to look past that is I want to look at our records, right? So Hubbard here, he's coming off a unanimous decision, and he has, been kind of like win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. Not anything shocking here. That's why he's probably on the prelims. And, they're just trying to bring him up through the lightweight division. Hernandez, on the other hand, has been pretty tumultuous. And now, let's be real here, though. He has fought way better competition. But, just fighting competition doesn't make you, a great fighter, right? He has dropped 4 of his last 5. And it's pretty damning. The split decision loss against Damon Jackson is close. He did have a knockdown, so and I felt like it was a decent match that he did that he did well in, and it could have really went either way. But the only fighter that he has beat in the last 2.5 years is Jim Miller, and nothing against Jim Miller. Was on a fantastic run until he met Bobby Green at UFC 300. Jim Miller is way past his prime, and that is the type of fight he should have won. And in reality, he probably should have finished him, but he didn't. He just got a unanimous decision where, he pretty much dominated that entire fight on the feet. And he should have. He was the faster, younger, quicker fighter. So you kind of expect that, right? When I look at Hubbard, he doesn't really have the type of pedigree that Hernandez has, especially recently. But he has won fights. This will be his second fight here in 2024. So he's been active. Hernandez, on the other hand, fought earlier this year, and it'll be his second fight also. I think that we kind of have like a stalemate-esque fight here. Okay, so now when we go to Tapology, this is a website I like to use for looking at odds and looking at gym affiliations. We can see that Hernandez is now 6-7 in the UFC, right? UFC, God bless. Been doing too much football. So when he fought here, he was a slight favorite, -190 to lose. He was -120 favorite there. Favorite against Jim Miller. A dog against Quarantillo. And a dog against Renato Moicano. Those are his last 5 fights, right? So the thing is, he's been a favorite in pretty much all his fights, or close to a favorite. Now, when we go to Austin Hubbard, he is 4-5 in the UFC, so similar. Neither been fantastic. Was a slight dog to Kurt Halabaugh, where he lost via triangle choke. And then you have a couple exhibition MMAs on the Ultimate Fighter. And then, he's coming back from, his delay here, or not delay, his hiatus, excuse me. He was let go, what's the date here, 2021, went to XMMA, Caged Aggressions, came back on the Ultimate Fighter, won a couple of fights, then lost to Halabaugh right there. But he did come back and beat Michael Figlak in his next time out. So he is fighting out of Elevation Fight Team in Denver, Colorado. You have some really, really good fighters in there. Neil Magny, Curtis Blades, Corey Sandhagen, Miranda Maverick. Like these are solid pros, solid professionals. And that's a big deal when you're looking at competition wise, right? And so coming to Hernandez, I believe I saw he was fighting out of X Factory, am I right? Yes, Factory X Muay Thai. So when we look here, again, a solid one also. Anthony Smith, Justin Jacoby, Rob Wilkinson, pros. These are pros. And that right there tells me, like, this fight is super close. And I don't really have a lean either way. But if you're forcing me to make a play on a super close fight, I'm going to always take the dog, especially if the line is what it is. Hubbard's +140. Hernandez easily could get it done. But if you're forcing me to pick a side here, I'm going to take the dog at plus 140. All right, going on to our next fight is going to be between Ismael Lucindo and Marina Rodriguez. Now, Rodriguez is coming off her UFC 300 split decision loss to Jessica Andrade, and Lucindo, I believe, is coming off, I want to say a victory, but we'll pull it up real quick. Yes, she's coming off 3 straight victories where she just beat Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I can't believe I got that name right on the first try. So, looking at the statistics, similar distance accuracy, you're going to see Rodriguez has a little bit more activity with the hands, but her defense is significantly less than Lucindo's. Now, that's not saying anything. Having a 63% distance defense is very good. That's very good. I know it's in yellow, but that's because it's technically the average, but extremely good. And I think, Lucindo's is just elite level, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, they both have ample time at distance, 54 minutes for Marina Rodriguez, and her sample, 39 minutes for Lucindo. And neither have recorded a knockdown in their sample sizes, so I don't view it as this is going to be a knockout, TKO or something of that nature. It'll probably be more to a decision or maybe a submission. Now, the biggest advantage here and the biggest easiest path to victory for Lucindo is going to be via offensive control, in my opinion. Rodriguez has shown that if she's taken into a defensive control position, she's just not getting up. 34.6% is not good. That essentially is saying, every 15 minutes, you're going to be controlled for at least one round. And that's a big deal because, if you're controlled for an entire round, you're definitely losing that round unless you had some huge damaging shots. But also, say it was 2.5 minutes for 2 rounds. Unless you got off some really good, striking or something, you know how judges are. They still do not know how to judge based off the criteria. And you could lose both those rounds, and that's the fight. That's the fight right there. Now, when we look at the matchup overall, Lucindo is just a rising prospect, infinitely younger, 15 years younger to be exact. Very, very green at 22 years old. And then you have, Rodriguez is obviously, I hate saying past their prime because, I'm not in the best shape of my life, nor could I, do any of the things these women or men do. But we have to acknowledge it from a logical, realistic standpoint. She is past her prime at the tender age of 37, I believe. And so, you just have to accept that, right? So when we look at Marina Rodriguez, she's had some decent fights. She has fought very good competition, and that needs to be noted. Fighting Jessica Andrade, Michelle Waterson-Gomez, Verna Jandiroba, Amanda Lemos, Mackenzie Dern. Those are the top of the top for this division. And so that needs to be noted. Obviously, Lucindo, she's fought a couple of Fighting Poliana Viana and Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Those are very good fighters, but they're not in the same stratosphere as the competition Marina Rodriguez has fought. Now, the most important thing here is, I feel like the handicap is going to be whether or not do we view that the experience is going to be enough for Rodriguez to get the victory here. And, that does give us, that is a very good question. And for the age of Marina Rodriguez, she doesn't have a ton of tread on the tires. She's fought moderately every year. Hasn't taken a ton of damage. So that is something to consider. And then she fights out of, I guess this is her own gym or something similar to that. where she's at. And then, Lucindo is going to be fighting out of, I'll pull it up real quick, Academia Fight House. I'm not super familiar with them, but we'll take a look. She's like the main. Verna Jandiroba is huge and is fighting for a championship. So, so she does have a partner there to go up against. That's a big deal, And so one thing that stands out, Jandiroba has fought Marina Rodriguez. So she has a sparring partner that has some insight to how Marina Rodriguez fights, and I think that is going to be an advantage. So when we come over here to the line kind of indicates that Lucindo is the minus 198 favorite. Rodriguez plus 164 in the comeback. I am going to have to lean Lucindo just because she has a better path to victory, more viable, younger. I feel like the experience she has in her 4 UFC fights are good enough. That this isn't a gigantic step up. In competition, it is a step up, but I think she's going to be up for the task. Our next fight, as you can see, I have Joaquin Buckley on here. I do not have Stephen Thompson up on this spreadsheet. The reason being is we could analyze Thompson's stuff, but I just don't think it's necessary in this aspect. And the reason is, he fought once last year versus Shavkat, and then he fought the Kevin Holland fight. And we have all these other fights, the Jeff Neal fights borderline 4 years ago. So I think it's pretty straightforward. If you can get Stephen Thompson to the ground at the ripe age of, I think he's 42 now, if I'm not mistaken, or 41, give or take. If you can get him to the ground, the fight's over. You're probably going to win, right? But if you're going to sit here and stand and trade with him, you're going to lose. That's just pretty much, that's it. So the question really, the cap here is whether Joaquin Buckley can get him to the ground and keep him there. Because even though Buckley is infinitely younger and in the prime of his career, standing with him is just not gonna, you can't point fight him. He's like the only guy you can't point fight. It just doesn't make any sense to. And Buckley is pretty reckless. 29.6% distance accuracy is horrendous. But, I don't want to take that away from him because he's very good. Extremely powerful, creative, and he has a ton of distance time, 63 minutes. This is not a novice in the striking game. Now, and the power is legitimate. 4 knockdowns, 1.7% knockdown rate. But you see 12.3% when it comes to the control percent. Offense is just, I don't know if that's going to be good enough. So let's dive a little bit more into it, see who we fought recently. The Vicente Luque fight was really good. He dominated there. The Alex Moreno fight was good. And, he's active. That is one thing that I will say about Buckley is he's taking advantage of his prime, being that he's, just over 30 years old. He's fought twice this year already. This will be his third time. This will be his 5th fight in the last 17 months, give or take, 18 months. So you kind of have to take that into consideration. He's produced 2 knockdowns in the last 4 fights. The fight against Chris Curtis, it seems like a distant memory, that being a knockout. So I don't really take that really with any issue. The thing is, this is a step up when it comes to the striking. I know you're probably sitting there, you're like, oh, well, Vicente Luque, well, that is not the Vicente Luque of old. Ever since he took, just extreme damage and came back too quick, he has been a shell of himself. And so what we really have to kind of consider here is he going to implement some type of ground game to, neutralize Thompson's point fighting? And I wanna believe that, but I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. So let's look at Thompson real quick. Our previous fighters here. Give me 1 second. I got to get to our page. And we just kind of have to see, because this will be the test for Buckley. He has to win this fight if he wants to compete at welterweight for like a title or anything of that nature. And he's 9-4. He's fought plenty of times in the UFC. He was a slight favorite in the last fight. Pick him in the fight before that. Favorite in the fight before that. So this is going to be pretty much they're going to want to see some type of like spark out of Buckley here. I am hesitant. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm hesitant to take Buckley in this situation simply because if I think he's going to want to stand with Thompson, and if he wants to stand with Thompson, like I just don't see that going well for him. And I think the line is a little wide. I would have probably put him at like a -170 favorite, to be completely honest. I don't think he's going to stay. Like, here's the thing. Shavkat Rakhmonov, he understood the assignment. He had 8 total distance strikes. He understood that he had to close the distance and he had to get control. 7 minutes, 45 seconds of control time. I don't know if Buckley is gonna do that. I think he is gonna try to look for some type of highlight reel knockout to, get him the credit he deserves. Because he's trying to scale those rankings. On our next fight, we have a fighter we were just talking about who's faced Stephen Thompson. We have Kevin Holland and Roman Dolidze. Now, Holland is like, the best way I could put it is he is the fighter that wins all the fights he's supposed to win, and then the fights he's not really supposed to win or could lose, he loses. And just to kind of give you an example on that, we'll bring him up real quick. Like, all right, so he beats Michael O in the last fight via armbar after he just got decked, essentially, and almost finished. Then he loses to Michael Page. He loses to Jack Della Maddalena, which was a split decision. I felt like he won that fight. Beats Chiesa, beats Ponzinibbio, loses to Stephen Thompson. So, like, these are just like, this is the thing, right? This feels as if this is a fight he should win. And he just does really well in those type of fights. A gigantic reach advantage of 5 inches against Elite. And he's younger, which is crazy to me. I feel like Holland fights so much you think he's like 36, 37. It's not the case. He's like 32, 33. Like, it's ridiculous. Now, when I look at Dolidze, the issue I have with Dolidze is, he won the Hermanson fight, which was like the oddest win I've ever seen in my life. In a fight he was losing, mind you. He goes on, he gets UD'd by Vettori and majority decision by Imavov. And then he beats Anthony Smith, which, the only person that thinks Anthony Smith is good at this point in his career is Anthony Smith. That's literally it. So I can't really take a lot of stock in that. And so when I look at the statistics here, Dolidze solid, distance accuracy. He is a plotter on the feet, though. Like, very, very plotting. I can't even say, like, it's measured because he's not, like, having this super high accuracy, right? And so the main concern for me when it comes to Kevin Holland is his distance defense is just horrendous. Like, he is very hittable. He's always in the pocket, always in the center line. I mean, he's getting hit 55% of the time. So that means fighters are hitting him more than they're missing him, which is, like, insane, considering the average is, like, right around 40% for a striker to land. Now, when we look at a couple other things, Delice has the 4 knockdowns, 1.4%, which is solid. And he has a control percentage of 25.2%. So, that makes you think, okay, he could possibly grapple Holland. That could be something that gives him trouble. The thing is, though, Holland's seen all these guys. It's never ending. He's fought all of these people. His sheet, just look at this nonsense. Since 2020, he's fought 1, 2, 3, or we'll say since the beginning of 2020, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So this will be his 18th fight in the last 4 years. That is just insane. Some guys won't even fight once a fucking year. And Holland's out here just doing Holland shit, fighting 4 times a year, regardless of the result. So when I look here, overall, I think one thing that people are sleeping on Holland is he is just so versatile in his victories. And that just shows up, to have 6 KOs and 4 submissions at this point in his career, that doesn't sound like a lot, because you have people who are like, oh, well, you've got Oliveira has this many submissions, people the greatest, But for a guy who is not competing for a championship anytime soon, and is just out there grinding away fights 3 or 4 times a year, his finish rate is insane. It's just off the charts. It's 77% in the UFC alone. And the thing is, yeah, he could get knocked out. But that hasn't even happened. The only KO loss he has is against Stephen Thompson, where he was stopped on the stool. He didn't get knocked out. And Hamzat submitted him, but that was also when Hamzat was about 25 pounds overweight, and he took the fight in 2 days. Just ridiculous shit. And so I don't really see Delice. I just don't see him, having that type of effect on him. And I think the line at minus 148 is actually lower than it should be. Delice is going to have to grind this fight out and make it very boring. And I just don't think Holland's going to, let that happen. I think he, even though Delice might not be push the pace like we said, I don't think Holland's going to let that happen. I think he's going to, it's not like when he was fighting Michael Page, okay? When he fought Michael Page, he was trying to figure out this puzzle that was unsolvable. That's not Roman Delice. So I am going to be leaning Kevin Holland. I think Holland by finish is definitely in play. I'm not sure what the line is, but we'll bring it up. It's plus 250. That's not bad at all. If you feel like he can add one to his another notch on his belt. That's not a bad play at all. So, but I will have Holland. I think he's the better fighter, more active, more versatile. Nothing Delice is going to try to do is going to, he hasn't seen before. All right, so we're going to go to our next fight, which is going to be, we'll do Jose Aldo and Mario Batista. This is an incredible fight, because I never thought we'd see Jose Aldo again. I thought he was pretty much done after the after the Merab fight, but then he came back and fought Jonathan Martinez and looked amazing. He's just, if you had sat a group of 100 people down and been like, okay, so Jose Aldo gets knocked out by McGregor. All right, span the next 5 years of these guys' careers. Who's going to have the better career? You could arguably say Jose Aldo has had the better career over the last 5 years since that loss, because he's fought. He's actually, not not out on yachts doing dumb shit. But I digress. So anyway, Batista fights at a much higher pace, 17 distance attempts per minute. That is going to be, something that Aldo's going to have to overcome in this fight. If you watch any Jose Aldo fights, he fights very measured and is a sniper. 52.1% distance accuracy. So he definitely is there fighting with, or throwing things with bad intentions. Now, the one thing that people are going to look to is Mario Batista and his control percent offense of 31.4%. So this is the thing that we said it. Anybody said it a million times, right? Jose Aldo is the anti-wrestler of the lower weight classes. Like, he's impossible to get to the ground. Like, you can control him in the clinch and stuff from time to time. But if Merab can't get him down and goes 0 for 16, I don't think Mario Batista is gonna be able to make that a reality. No offense to him, I just don't see that being real. And so when we look at Bautista, they're very similar in size, reach, height, the age, obviously vast difference. Aldo's way older, but when I look at who Bautista has fought and beat, he's on a 6-fight winning streak, which is very, very good. And he's been very active. 3 fights in 2022, 2 fights in 2023. This is his second fight in 2024. I think he's moving in the right direction, right? But this is what worries me more than anything. Okay, we are 3, 6, 9. This will be his 11th fight in the UFC. Even though he's got these victories and he's beat some okay guys like, Ricky Simone and, some journeymen like Brian Kelleher and Miles Johnson, there's not one elite fighter on this resume that he's fought. And I'm not saying right now that Jose Aldo is an elite fighter at this point in his career. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is he is still a capable, serviceable fighter that cannot be slept on. And so I don't think, if we look at Bautista, he has recorded 1 knockdown in 10 fights. So from a striking standpoint, he's not gonna, that you're not gonna get the best of Aldo probably standing up. You're not gonna knock him out unless you're like we saw, you have to have, one punch power basically to put him down. But when I look at Bautista and just his overall, the 3 submissions, 1 KO, 4 decisions in the UFC, I don't think he's going to submit Aldo either. I don't think that's something, because I just don't think he's going to get him to the ground and have him down long enough. And in reality, Aldo's never been submitted in the UFC. 21 fights, never been submitted. He's been knocked out 4 times, never been submitted. And so I think in this space right here, it's very simple. If Bautista was like an up-and-coming prospect who was going to, possibly contend in that weight division and be a possible champion going forward, I'd be like, yeah, he's probably going to give Aldo everything he can handle and more. I don't see that. I think he's just, he's an average fighter for the division, and just even at this point in his career, average is not beating Jose Aldo, excuse me. And I think plus 120, there's plenty of value there. I don't have any feel on the props or anything of that nature. But yeah, I think plus 120 is totally viable. And that's where I will be leaning with that. Now, I know you see on the fight here, we have the Kayla Harrison-Ketlin Vieira fight. I'm not touching a minus 1,000 fighter unless I'm taking some type of prop. And the only prop I would consider taking if you want plus money is going to be probably a finish prop, so plus 110. That's fine for me, just to hope she gets a finish of some sort, which you would hope she would. Kayla Harrison is here to compete for championships, and that needs to be done via finishes like she did of Holly Holm. So you can get her at plus 110. There's not much more I'm going to dive into that. I don't have the database. I don't have the sample size in the UFC for Harrison, and I don't think I need an entire side of a plus 650 dog to make an accurate representation of what I want to see. So we'll go on to the next fight, which will be our first championship fight between Juliana Pena and Raquel Pennington, and this will be the co-main event. So Pennington has had kind of like a revival in her career, and in reality, she's done incredibly well. To beat Bueno Silva in the last fight, I did call that. I felt like she was going to control her and just dominate, and I mean she had 11 and a half minutes of control time, and she's on an incredible run to her career, 6 wins in a row, which I know like people are probably like, oh, that's not that impressive. She hasn't beat that many people. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, you still got to give us some credit. I mean, like, goodness gracious, like she's 30. She 36 yet? No, I think she's 35. I'll get a look at the actual age on Tapology real quick. It looks like she was 35. So let's pull it up. 36, yeah. Goodness gracious, I can't do math. Excuse me. All this math, I still can't do it. So going off against Juliana Pena, it's important to note that I feel like Pena. I mean, she beat Nunez, which was insane, and then obviously in the second fight she got destroyed. But that performance is just stuck in my head perpetually for like all of time. It feels like these ladies are very similar in output on both sides, distance striking. And, this is something that was just like shocking to me, right? So Pennington, 28% control offense, but she's controlled 30% of the time defensively. And Pena is, 18% offense, but she's also controlled 39% of the time. So, like, it's just like, they want the fight to be in the clinch, but not at distance, but neither of them are, like, exceptionally better than the other at that, which is just odd, to say the least, to me. So when I look at Pena, the one thing that gives me pause is it has been 2 years since she's fought. And that is, like, you never, when you're getting over, like, 33, 34, like, time is not your ally. You want to fight as much as possible. You want to stay in fighting shape as much as possible. And just, because it's better for you in general, especially as long as you're not getting like Tony Ferguson and getting destroyed, right? So Pennington, on the other hand, has been like pretty active. She's had 3 fights since Pena's last fight. And so one thing that really, that I really am having, trouble with is, do I view, Pena through the lens of the fighter that beat Amanda Nunez, or do I view her through the fighter that was every single other fight where she could have been hit or miss, right? Because if it's the fighter who beat Amanda Nunez, then yeah, she's light years better than Raquel Pennington, right? But if it's the other one, then it's going to be much closer than people anticipate. So Pennington in the UFC is now, 13-5. She only has 3 finishes, the submissions. I don't know if she's going to submit Pena here. I mean, she would probably grind out a decision. But I don't think I don't think she's going to be able to do what she did to Bueno Silva. I had written up, when I did the Bueno Silva fight for Betting Pros, I had written up that, if the fight goes into the 3rd round or later, Pennington is going to win. She's going to wear her out. She's going to put her pace on her. And that's going to be it. I don't think Pennington's going to be able to do the same thing to Juliana Pena. Pena is not that explosive type of fighter that Bueno Silva is. She is more, like I said, more measured. 15 distance attempts per minute is high pace, but she is not reckless like that. She seemed reckless against, Amanda Nunes because in the first fight, that's what she had to do. She had to make it dirty, fight inside a phone booth to give herself a chance because, Nunes is the more polished, just, more, direct striker. And not like everybody knows that. Nobody disagrees with that. But Pennington is not that striker, obviously. And so even if she gets reckless in this fight, I don't think she's going to gas out cardio-wise. And I just feel as if she's going to get the better of Pennington in numerous areas. It can be on the feet, it can be on the ground. I just think she's better, and I think even though like Pennington has racked off these wins, and I'm not taking away from those, the competition that she has racked those wins off against is not really kind of the same. Nunes twice, McMahon, GDR, ignore Nico Montano, but Valentina Shevchenko, it's a lot higher level in my opinion. And I think she's going to learn from the Nunes fight. The second one, she probably needed the time off. I think 2 years is a little long. But I'm going to ride with Juliana Pena. I think at plus 142. Again, a lot of dogs on this card that I like. Normally that's either really good or really bad. I did like Hanato Moicano last week. That was a very good result. But yeah, I just think this is pretty straightforward. I think Pena has the gas tank to do all the grappling with Pennington. I think Pennington doesn't possess the power to keep her at bay from the aggressive, reckless way she wants to be. And I think that's just going to be, she's going to overcome it, probably via decision, 3-2, if I had to guess. All right, so then now the long-awaited main event. Thank you for if you're here through the whole video, I really appreciate it. We've got a main event, a championship fight that many are are like, why the hell are we having this fight? I kind of felt the same way when I saw the fight get announced, but I'm not disappointed. I think the fight has potential to be good. Obviously, Pereira is a absolute monster. And I mean, this is one thing, 60% distance accuracy. Now, I know you're probably like, well, Andrew, like he has a lot of leg kicks. Leg kicks are considered distance strikes. Like those are easier to land than, other strikes. Yeah, all that's real. But everybody else can do that too, and they don't. I don't see anything remotely close to this number. I think Sean O'Malley's was higher, but we won't get into that. But like, this is insane. It's an insane number, right? The one thing that does worry me is Pereira's distance defense is not fantastic, 53%. And we've seen that as he is taking punches before. He just, he believes in that left hook and that power, and that's real. That is a real thing. So looking at, how this fight plays out, Rountree fights southpaw, and that's going to set up an interesting amount of things, right? That sets up the right high kick for Pereira. The left hook is not, it's there. It would have to come over a jab, but Rountree is not a jab guy. He's a reckless hook, overhand left, just monster coming through the pocket, okay? And so when I look at the overall knockdowns and stuff, which is kind of where you're looking power-wise, I mean, Roundtree has 9 knockdowns, and we'll go through the fights here in a minute. 2.7%, and Pereira 6 knockdowns, 1.6%. I just don't, I don't see how this fight goes to decision. Obviously, that's not a hot take, duh. But again, these guys are just going to bang it out on the feet. And those of you who are sitting here and are like, oh, well, if Roundtree wants to win, he's going to have to take it to the ground, right? He's just going to have to. Well, he's not going to do that. That's not in his DNA. That's not in his sample size. He's not doing that. He is on a 5-fight win streak. Granted, none of these guys are Alex Pereira, but it's 5 wins nonetheless, 4 by finish, right? So this is the one thing, okay? Anybody who has any experience watching older fights or has been around UFC for a while, Roundtree fought Gokhan Saki, who was also a Glory kickboxing champion, okay? And so the thing is, nobody thought he should strike with Saki, and he did. And he finished that obviously in the first round, dominated him. But it was very simple, okay? Saki was throwing leg kicks, and he was just throwing them, naked leg kicks, no setup, nothing like that. Roundtree walked into the leg kick and hit him with a straight left right down the pipe, and that was it. That was it. That's literally what happened. So the thing is, Pereira throws leg kicks like nobody's ever seen. He flicks his hip, and then all of a sudden it's there, and it's so unworldly. This guy's an alien, basically, when it comes to fighting. And the thing is, Roundtree is reckless in the pocket. But if we're being honest here, I feel like he needs to be somewhat reckless if he wants a shot at winning this fight. Because if it's a technical kickboxing match, he's going to lose. Or probably get knocked out. That's just the facts. But when I think of reckless and Roundtree, it's not the same as Yuri Prohaska, who is doing all kinds of funky shit and unorthodox things. And then, that type of stuff just doesn't, it worked a little bit in the first fight against Pereira, but it just does not work long term against him. That guy, you can do all that goofy shit you want, and in and out. You cannot be leading in with your chin up in the air. You just can't do that shit against him. Roundtree is not like that. His recklessness is, I'm just throwing haymakers, off balance type, and obviously he could get clipped on a counter left hook, and that could be it. But for what it's worth, Roundtree is not just some scab. The distance, the distance and the reach could potentially be an issue. But for what it's worth, he's the younger fighter too, by a margin, And it's a hot take, obviously, to think that he can go in here and get a win against Pereira. But plus 370 is not some super dog margin. I just think it's a little wide. And if you're like, okay, well, I think Pereira's going to win, I would obviously suggest you probably look at a round one or round prop, Pereira round one plus 175 or something like that. If that's what you're thinking is going to be the reality of the situation. I think the line is a little wide. I am going to probably take Roundtree for less than what I normally would, just because I think, he doesn't have to fight. When Yuri fought Pereira the second time, I didn't really think there was a chance that he could beat him, right? Because he was just so unorthodox, and that did not work the first time, right? It just didn't, But I think Roundtree is just different. I mean, he's bigger. And one thing that people are not really talking about, he is faster than Pereira, like significantly faster. And he's not as powerful. Nobody's saying that. I don't think that power is matched anywhere in the world. But he's also not like some volume striker who's going to have to land like a 6-punch combination to get him out of there. 9 knockdowns is an insane number. Let's take a look at this nonsense, okay? 1, 2, 3. He's knocked down 4 of his last 5 opponents. Obviously, the Eric Anders fight where he had 4 knockdowns is insanity. But he has the power to put somebody down with 1 punch, and that's been shown time and time again. I don't think cardio is really going to be a question here. I don't think this is going the distance. I don't think there's going to be a ton of grappling. Neither one of these guys indicate that from their statistics. 5% combined between the two of them. I just think whoever lands cleanest first is going to win. And if you're going to give me plus 400 almost on a guy who has recorded 9 knockdowns in his last 6 fights, then that's who I'm going to take. Especially seeing that he has beat a glory kickboxer before. So, all right, guys, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, congratulations. I appreciate it. If you enjoy the content, please subscribe, like, comment, share the video with friends, family members, anything like that. I normally do UFC pay-per-views or fight nights that I deem are worth covering. Other than that, it's pretty much all college football for right now. I'm going to try to work in some NFL stuff. But other than that, thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again for watching, listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.